Hello and welcome to the Rise of the Rebel Matriarch Leadership Summit extra special guest we have today dropping in, Robin Lim, who is a beautiful, beautiful woman who is a Filipino-American midwife and founder of the Bumi Sehat Foundation. It's an Indonesian not-for-profit which offers free prenatal care, birthing services, and medical aid to anyone who needs it. And Robin also serves on the Bumi-Wadah Philippines board, known locally as Lola Robin. And I know her as Ibu Robin. And she's a huge advocate for human rights in childbirth, protecting mothers and newborns to foster peace. And she and her team have been working relentlessly since 2003 to combat Indonesia's high maternal and infant mortality rates. She's also been awarded the CNN Hero of the Year in 2011, and she's received the Jeannine Parvati BirthKeeper Award in 2012. She is the author of several books, including Ecology of Gentle Birth, After the Baby's Birth, Wellness for Mothers, Eating for Two, Placenta, The Forgotten Chakra, a poetry collection called The Geometry of Splitting Souls, the novel Butterfly People, and most recently, Bali, A Cajun Paradise, Stories of Courage, which is the book that I met her from and through when I was at the Ubud Writers Festival just a couple of weeks ago. And I was blown away by your presence, by your love, by your nurturing, and by your generosity of spirit in sharing the wisdom that you have embodied through the years of being such a nurturer and carer and advocate for gentle birth, which I just want to say it is globally recognized, because all of the women that we had in last week, we spoke about decolonizing birth to heal the earth, and many of the women, Jane Hardwick Collins and Uma Dinsmore Tooley, were all praising you and paraphrasing you about the gentle birth heals the earth. And yeah, I just want to welcome you today and thank you from the bottom of my heart for saying yes to this and for, finding time in your very busy life to come and share your wisdom with us.
Thank you. Selamat pagi. It's
Mhm.
nice that the mothers and babies didn't call me to an emergency today. I really was hoping to create this bubble of space for you and I and all the women to just have a little time together. Feels good.
Yes, it does indeed. And that's it. When we give from our heart, we receive too. So I know that so many are going to receive so much wisdom from you. And I'd love to just start really, about learning a little bit more about you. Like, who is Ibu Robin? Who is this woman behind the big mission and vision that you have in the world? Where was she born? What inspired her to become, the woman that she is today? I'd love to hear a little bit about that journey.
Thank you. So I'm the granddaughter of a helot. In the Philippines, a helot is someone who's a healer and often a baby catcher. And she was born at the turn of the century, my Lola Vicenta, and her mother was actually a licensed midwife in the Philippines with some medical training. However, all the schools during the wars closed down. She survived World War II. It was quite terrible. My mom was a little girl at that time. And just during a time when the Philippines was in a lot of strife between World War I, World War II, and then during World War II and after, she was just well known for the magic in her hands. I mean, she was just well known. The head of Department of Health in Mountain Province was received into the world by my mother, as was her husband, by my grandmother. And yeah, when I'm in the Philippines, they always joke and say that I have a Filipino midwifery license through my grandmother, because I've offered to sit for the exams there, and they go, "Oh, no need." But
Oh, wow.
they also have reciprocity with the United States, because my original midwifery license was in the U.S. and still I keep it current. But I feel like midwifery is this interesting balance between science and nature and humans' relationship, as the Balinese call it, trihirta karana, which is the three pillars of life: humans' relationship with humans, and that's science, and humans' relationship with Mother Nature and Father Time, and then humans' relation with God or with divine, our divine creator. So with a balance of those three, and that's how we really see Bumi Sehat. That's our vision, is that we really all have great scientific skills as medical professionals, which we don't use unless we absolutely need them. We keep them on the side, but they're always there and they're always ready. But the most important thing is our respect for nature and the mother's natural process, the family, and how how we can support families and their and cultural safety within any family, and then of course the divine. People should feel really free to pray. I was mentored by a British midwife who used to say that your prayers and your bendable straw are the two most important things in your birth kit. So yeah, I really try to live that Tri Hitakarana, the three pillars of wellness, and everything I do. And definitely I got that from my grandmother in the Philippines as a little child.
And did you know her? Did you grow up around her? And yeah.
Yeah. No, the relatives in the Philippines used to warn me. They'd say, don't spend too much time with your Lola because she'll put an anting-anting into you. And an anting-anting is it can be a tiny grain of sand or a piece of a seashell or a bit of a root. You don't know what it is, but somebody that's really a powerful healer can put one into you. And once you have that, you won't rest until everybody in the world has not suffered. And so I'm sure I definitely remember them saying to me, you won't have an easy life if you let her put that anting in you. And I really didn't understand when I was a child how big that little tiny bit was. And yeah, she had it and she gave it to me. I think I gave it to my granddaughter too, because my granddaughter is actually finishing her nurse midwifery program in Austin, Texas right now. And she's a beautiful reflection of our family. So it does seem to, skip generations, and that generation after generation of women somehow hold this energy of protecting the most vulnerable citizens of the world are pregnant women, birthing women, postpartum women, and their babies. The babies are the smallest citizens of the world in every single culture, every culture in the world. They are the most vulnerable. So the mothers and babies need to be protected. I don't know if you realize that today there will be somewhere between 800 and 830 mothers will die from complications of pregnancy and childbirth. Most of those deaths preventable. Most of those deaths are preventable. You know, mainly driven by poverty and hunger, malnutrition. And so, we don't know how many mothers we save. We just know how many mothers are smiling when they give birth. And I would say what Ina May loves to say, Ina May Gaskin, the legendary midwife from Tennessee Farm, who wrote Spiritual Midwifery, she used to say that if a mother isn't smiling when she's giving birth, someone's not treating her right. And we live by that at Bumi Sehat. And we're always talking about that. We have 16 midwives here in Bali. We have in the Philippines, we have 5 midwives, and they're quite busy there. And in the first birth center and the second birth center, the smaller one in Dulag in the Philippines, we have 3 midwives. In Aceh, we have 4 midwives. In Papua, I think we have 6 midwives now, and there's another 10 midwives that are young Papuans that are in school and volunteer. We train them as well as their school training. They get that gentle birth training in Papua. So we have the 4 birth centers and community health centers that are free or by donation in Indonesia. And there's one in Lombok, one in Bali, one in Papua, and one in Aceh. And there's 2 in the Philippines.
Wow, that's huge. So tell me a little bit about, you're Filipino-American, so you were born in America, and tell me a little bit about your journey to becoming a midwife, what you saw and what inspired you to then come to Indonesia and back to the Philippines and create these not-for-profit organizations.
So I became a teenage mom. I went from following my Lola, my Filipino grandmother around. And when I got back to the US, I went to high school there and fell in love and, went to work in France and ended up, you know, being completely idealistic and having a baby when I was a teenager. And people talk about that being the end of the world. If you have a baby, you know, when you're a teenager, your life will be over. My life just began because I got to be with every day in and day out, and every night, all night, with my most profound guru, my first child. And she really taught me how to be a mother and how to stay human and be a really the kind of human being that I wanted to be. And yeah, I mean, my grandmother was still alive at the time. My mother had brought her to the US to live with her in California. So my grandmother got to know my daughter. My daughter got to speak her language. And it was really it was a beautiful journey. Um, I moved by the time I was 24 years old. I moved to Hawaii with two children at that point and was a single mom. And we always think that when something's happening to our lives and we're getting a big heartbreak or feeling abandoned, that it's also the end of the world. But all those things they are big teachers. So I learned a lot. I learned a lot about who I wanted to be and who I wanted to surround myself with. And it was in Hawaii that I wrote my first book after the baby's birth, and and finished school. And my daughter always says she went to college twice because I put her in a little front pack, and I didn't have an automobile, so I rode my bicycle to school with her in the front pack. And then she went again when she was a big kid, when she grew up. Um, so yeah, I just step by step in baby steps. I was drawn to midwifery. I ended up in Bali after kind of a string of big heartbreaks. My sister died from a complication of her pregnancy in the United States in the care of an OBGYN with insurance. And she had preeclampsia, which turned into eclampsia, and her doctor said, "No, you're fine." He didn't even really look at her chart or pay attention. But she was in the state of Alabama. She's a woman of color. She also carried a lot of weight. She wasn't skinny. She was a good size, as quite a lot of Asian Pacific Islanders are. And she was married to a Korean man. So in the southern United States, three strikes you're out. He did not pay attention to her, and she died. And ha- having her third baby. So yeah, that was a huge loss. So my sister and my dearest friend died, and she was a breastfeeding mom at the time, and she had a terrible car accident. And then the midwife that delivered some of my children into the world, she also passed away. She died in a car accident. So within a few months, I lost three of the closest women in my life. And I mean, I used to be terrified when the phone would ring that someone would tell me my mom had died because everybody else was dying. And I had to ask myself a really essential question. And I encourage everybody to ask themselves this. Every woman can ask herself this. Am I living my life every day for love? Because when I really looked back and reviewed my life, and you do that when people you love die, when I reviewed my life, I realized that my commitment coming to this planet at this time in history and incarnating as a human being was my intention was to live for love. And so the answer to my question at that time was in the, in 1992 was, well, you were kind of living your life for love, but not 100%. So by by 1992, I met my current husband. I was a single mom for a long time, and he was widowed with two children. We ended up together, and we came to Bali because we wanted to see what it was like many people do. And being a real fan of anthropology, I'd read so much about how Balinese were amazing parents and how they treated their elderly with respect. And the elderly were being put into basically elderly orphan homes, which is what those assisted living centers are. And the children were being honored as souls. And so I wanted to come and learn about that. And I thought I would take it back to Hawaii, which Hawaii for me was in the United States the most comfortable place to live because people look like me. And so And having that Asian Pacific Island background, I mean, my maternal grandfather was from like Vanuatu, Marshall Islands area, a wandering Chamorro. So yeah, so I thought I would just come to Bali for 3 months because back then you could come on a tourist visa for 3 months and bring the children and my new husband and that we would arrive back in Hawaii in 3 months. But during that time, I got pregnant with our youngest son, with Hanuman, and we were offered a home to live in the village, and I got offered a job teaching. And one thing led to another, and it was just easy to stay for a year. And once we stayed for a year and we had our son here and we got to really immerse ourselves in this particular village, we never looked back. And so it's been 33 years of being in Bali, Indonesia. And yeah, I really love it. I really love it.
Amazing. It is so welcoming. And I do love how they rever the children. Like, coming from a Western world where your kids are just told to shut up and be quiet, that kind of thing. But that's what I loved about here. Everywhere is family friendly. The kids are welcome. And, the minute they see a child, they light up, they absolutely light up. People want to take them off you and give you a bit of space. Like everybody looks after your kids for you. And I remember coming here and my dad said, oh, be really careful. Like it's really there's child trafficking is a huge issue in Bali, and which is true. There is, I'm sure, a lot of an underbelly in Bali, but also I felt like this was the safest place we could be. Like our kids are loved everywhere we go. They know their names, and it's a really different kind of feeling. Like everybody just wants to love on the child and nurture the child. And so I can see how you felt like it was home and it was the place to be. Do you have any kind of insight in, you said you were really interested in that culture, but then there's also a culture of patriarchy in this country too, a culture of sending women off to work and leaving their children behind. And there, I know you wrote a book called Bali, A Cajun Paradise. Tell me a little bit about, the inspiration behind that and the reality of life and how, your life's mission is to kind of appease that.
Yeah. Well, Bali's a checkered cloth, as you know. We really honor that poleng, the black and white checkers, and the gray area in between being a very sacred space. When, for example, men get together to help build a house for someone in the village and do gotong royon, which is a volunteer. They'll work very hard together to volunteer to do things, to make sure that the water in the subak, the rice fields, runs properly, all of that. But they will wear an over sarong of black and white checkers. So Bali is definitely a checkered cloth. And yeah, I I do see that there is a lot of patriarchy here. However, you know, and the women do marry from their family compound into the boys' family compound. But that that young man is eating from his mother's kitchen his until his mother has passed away. And that mother is going to protect her daughter in love. Most women protect women and care for women. And you always try to, as a villager, when you see your daughter being attracted to a certain young man, you really make sure, and you already know all of the women in the village, and you work together and you play together and you go to temple together and you do everything together. But when your son becomes interested in a daughter, the 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 two mothers of these children that are looking to get married will become closer and closer friends because it ensures that your daughter is protected by her new mother-in-law. I don't like to say mother-in-law because it has nothing to do with the law. I mean, it might
Mhm.
be a legal arrangement, but mother-in-law is a much nicer way to say it. And so I see women really protecting their daughter-in-laws. For example, in our village, domestic violence is not tolerated at all. I mean, if a woman is abused by her husband, there will be a meeting of the Women's Association first, and then of the whole Banjar, all the men will sit together and the Women's Association will make offerings and pray in the temple for this human being who's abusing another human being. So, and then there will be, decisions made by the whole village on how to mitigate the suffering of this family to make sure that women are protected. So, yes, in many ways it's a patriarchy, but in so many ways, the matriarchy is working.
Oh,
There's,
I love that.
yeah,
That is so incredible. And that is like the vision, when we talk about a return to the matriarchy. What Jane Hardwick Collins said is we can't return there because that was in the past, but we can hold a vision and an environment where, we live by those values and we support each other. And that is the dream, isn't it? To be held by community, to have that village there. I know as a woman who, left my country of origin and my family of origin and to move away to cultivate community. And it's really difficult, to be in these nuclear families that we have now where there's no support, where mothers are left kind of literally no one can prepare you for motherhood, I guess. No one can prepare you for that rite of passage. And I'm so lucky that I feel blessed too to have such a deep connection to my grandmother and to my lineage and my ancestry that when I got pregnant with my daughter, I felt the hands of my grandmothers on my womb space to step up and hold space for other women who didn't feel empowered, who didn't feel connected, and I went about turning every stone over inside of myself to learn about birth and understand the systems that were in place that were trying to rob us of our power, and to really then learn and embody the teachings of doula trainings and yoga teacher trainings so that I could then, support others. Because again, I was, teenage pregnancies in Ireland were very, very, common in growing up. And lots of my young friends had babies at, I was 13 when my best friend had a baby. And that was, I think, the best kind of, what's it called, birth education I could have ever had, to know that, and thankfully my mother was educated and she taught me about, how these things happen. And she taught me all of these. She taught me sex education. She taught me how to be empowered, how to respect and honor my body. But it was like an awakening for me to one, ensure that, I didn't just give my virginity away to anybody and that I was making empowered decisions from a very early age. And two, I could see what they were put through in a system where, they were in Ireland. It was very common to go through the hospital system, and they were traumatized and they weren't empowered. They weren't taught anything about how to be a mother. They were just sent back to their homes and left kind of to figure it out for themselves. And it was really, it was a difficult time for many of my friends. And I guess when I became an older mother, I was 36 when I had my daughter, I really felt a responsibility and a duty of care to be able to teach women that this is a rite of passage that they get to embrace and enjoy rather than endure, and it's a really important time to be able to birth our babies peacefully and powerfully, and to be able to give these babies that are, little star seeds the best start in life. So I'd love to hear from you about, your mission and vision to create that gentle birth for the children and how that actually does heal the earth. How do you, how does it heal the earth by giving children a gentle birth?
so let me just say first that I feel like I've really looked at those same issues that you've looked at. I mean, the half of me that's Western, from Western culture, has always wondered, what is that aggression? What is that has not honored women, has not honored mothers, and has actually, women like you and me 100 years ago would have been burned at the stake as witches. You know, if you made a meal for your neighbor on the next farm who had a baby, and then a week later her husband went out hunting and didn't come home, people could accuse you of cursing her family in that food and you would be killed for that. And so systematically in Western so-called civilized culture, systematically women were taught that if they cared for other women, they would be accused of being witches, and that would put their life at risk. And so women began to not care for other women, which is completely against our nature. You know, we're so rich in estrogen, you know, nurturing and caring and supporting. That's who we are, you know, and so nourishing each other, nourishing children, nourishing each other. And so women systematically in Western culture were taught to fear caring for other women. You know, fortunately, I had the influence of my Filipino side, especially my grandmother, who really taught me to care for the neighbors and care for everyone and not to be afraid, and not to be afraid of being so loving that you would make big mistakes. You would fall in love with the wrong guy in high school and you'd make big mistakes. But if you could stay true to yourself, I mean, people sometimes say to me, "Oh, you're too trusting, you're too loving." And I always say, "Yeah, but I'm not going to change. I'm not changing that because I really like that part about being a woman." So there's that. You know, I feel like that's one of the things that we benefit with from here in Asia is that we didn't have that witch hunt going on. We had other things, but we didn't have the witch hunt. And also, the plague happened in in all over the European areas of the world, and the Black Plague, children died, and the people that survived were the ones that were able to toughen up enough, because if you just let your heart be broken, which most women did, they wouldn't survive either, because their immunity would they'd have no immunity to the plague, so they would soon be dead as well, very sick and die. And so just on an evolutionary level, all of us with Western civilization blood, we survived because we were able to block our emotions, separate ourselves, and really almost limit the amount of love we could give our children. Because if you loved your children thoroughly when they died, how could you survive that? So those of us that survived, and every single generation after generation, every single human being walking on this earth right now, they're here because their ancestors survived by aggression and by being emotionally blocked. So here we are now. And I think Jane, who you talked about earlier, she's one of my heroines. I love her so much. Uh, she really nailed it when she said, and we can't bring that back. It's in the past. It's time for us to reinvent, everything about how we want to be human on this earth, how we can stay human on this ailing planet. So we have to reinvent that. So, yeah. So
Mm.
go back. What was your question? I was trying to.
Yeah, so how do we reinvent that? You know, you obviously live in a village where there is that kind of level of support. You have dedicated your life's work to giving back and creating these nurturing and safe spaces for people to birth, to be able to heal the earth through one birth at a time. So how would you, help us as the regular people of the world who might be cut off from our emotions, who might not feel that deep, innate connection to be there for other women and other mothers and to mother others, which is like, mother is a marsupial word, isn't it? It's got mother and other in it, and that's what we are here for. And yeah, I guess just tips and tricks, or what would your message be to others to be able to awaken to that innate nurturing within and to be able to dedicate our lives, especially in this busy, modern, colonized world where we're cut off from, these feelings, to be able to show up in service to not only ourselves and our families, but humanity.
Yeah. Well, and I just spent a lot of time in the Maldives as a speaker in the Soniva Soul Festival, and there were over 40 doctors there that have dedicated their lives to curing cancer. And they talked about cancer as being the loneliest cell in the body. And 1 out of 2 humans on the earth right now has cancer. They might not know it. Most of them don't know it yet. But it's because of loneliness. So the first cancer cell is so lonely from trauma that it hides in your body and starts reproducing in a very rogue way, right? So these doctors spent their lives and continue to spend their lives curing cancer. And when I spoke, I talk to them about preventing loneliness, going back to pregnancy. How do we talk about our babies? You know, the father that I admire is the one that says, my partner and I are pregnant. Because if he says, well, my wife and I are pregnant, the baby hears him. My wife is pregnant. That means he's not pregnant, you know? So babies are always listening. When you say, we are pregnant, my wife and I are pregnant, that's a big message to the baby that he's fully engaged and dedicated and devoted. So from right there, it's how we use our language. It's, you know, is someone singing to her belly? And we never assume that a woman walking in, we had a young prostitute the other night give birth. We did not assume when she came in that she ever gets enough love in her life. She doesn't, you know? So our receptionist, it's so great that the pandemic is over. We can hug again. Our receptionist will hug a mom in labor when she arrives. The first hug as soon as you walk into the clinic. So, you know, we have to prevent cancer by preventing loneliness, and that starts at birth. Who is your first lover? Who is your first lover? Your placenta. You're in there in the womb, riding upside down, and you're relating to the placenta. You're playing with your umbilical cord. You're putting your face, you can hear the placenta humming. The placenta is bringing you all the nutrients and oxygen that you need and taking away the waste. Doing all of that miraculously without ever mixing your mother's blood with yours. How does it do that? It's like this incredible, miraculous organ of Genesis. And a baby isn't thinking, well, this isn't a real person. The baby feels the soul of that placenta. And Balinese people understand that. They know that the placenta has a soul, and that soul is your guardian angel. And when you are born, that soul should not be severed from you because you'll be immediately lonely and feel abandonment and distrust and trauma. It takes a while once you're outside of your mother and you're skin to skin with her. Hopefully, no one's taking you over to a warmer and put you in a plastic box with a light in your eyes. You know, hopefully, no one's sticking a thermometer up your ass to measure your temperature. Welcome to the world. No, we don't do any of that at Bumi Sehat, and none of it's necessary. All that stuff, taking the baby's temperature under the arm, weighing and measuring the baby, that can happen hours later, right there with the mother holding the baby. The mother goes skin to skin, and we just hold a sacred space and leave the placenta intact with the baby. After the placenta is born, the placenta goes in a bowl next to mother, so that baby doesn't feel any panic or trauma that I'm being separated from my first lover, from my guardian angel. You know, and that guardian angel is dying a natural death at the time of the baby's birth, and the spirit of that angel will stay with you for your entire life. So those of us, your question was, how do those of us in the world, how do we mitigate our traumas that started before we were born? They started with our ancestors. How do we mitigate those traumas now? And the secret that I found, that everyone can do it and it's free and you can do it tonight. I sat down and wrote a letter to my placenta, to my guardian angel. I said I was a little baby and I didn't know they were going to, I was born in a military hospital in the US. My mother was totally alone. She was isolated. She asked for the placenta. They wouldn't give it to her. They thought she was a crazy native with a bone in her nose, you know? That's not permitted in hospitals in the US. So they took my placenta away and it was incinerated with medical waste, right? Can you imagine that there we are? Shiva and Rahima talked about this. She wrote a beautiful book about placenta as well. And she talked about it. Most of us that were born in any kind of medical setting, our placenta was thrown in the trash, in the rubbish, as waste. How many people, everyone I know who's ever been born in that situation, if I ask them, honestly, have you ever felt like trash in your life? Have you ever felt like you were no better than rubbish? And all of them say, oh yeah, there were years when I felt no better than rubbish. Because your identical twin, the body of your guardian angel, your first lover, was thrown in the rubbish, was trashed. So of course, it's our identical twin genetically. Of course we feel like trash for years of our life until we heal our trauma. So write a letter to your placenta. Just say, I was a helpless baby. It's kind of like the human condition, and I'm really sorry. I took that letter, I took it outside, I put a stick of incense and some flowers on it. I got some water because, I can get water from our family temple, which is tirtha, which is holy water, but all water is tirtha. All water is sacred and holy. And I got some water and I sprinkled it on there, and then I lit the whole thing on fire. And you know what? My relationship with money absolutely transformed after that. I mean, really, if I just go back to talking to my placenta, who's my guardian angel, when I'm worried about money, I'm not allowed to worry for more than 5 minutes a day because it doesn't help anyway. But look at these bags. Like, does that look like a placenta? Look at connected to me. What happens when you lose your purse? Look at this. I have a backpack placenta. I have so many bags. People give me bags. And then you take, they have straps and they're like an umbilical cord. What happens if you lose your purse? What's in there?
Your money, your
Your
car.
money source for how you eat and survive. And
Mhm.
what else is in there? Your
Yeah,
ID,
your ID.
your
Yeah.
identity. Yes, all of
Mhm.
it. So we walk around trying to heal that trauma of being separated from our first lover, which was our placenta, and we manifest symbols of it everywhere. I mean, I have a whole like tree over there covered with bags that people have given me. And I love bags because, as women, we love to carry things. Like you said, the marsupial, the mom and the other. And so, everyone, please write a letter to your placenta. Straighten that out right now. Fix that.
Mhm.
The other thing is the vagal nerve, starts in our head and goes all the way down our back and through our whole body. And I like to say this to anytime I get to talk to a group of people. You can do a quick vagal nerve reset. I'll do it with you right now.
Mhm.
Hands together, warm them up. And these two fingers from your eyebrows to your hairline, massage up, and then cup your hands around your face, just like you would a child. You can put the tongue on the roof of your mouth. Do it 3 times. Two. You'll be breathing. 3. Just like you would a little girl, hold your face. Now, with your fingers, mess up your hair. Massage your scalp. Oh, feels so good. Mm. And then with your thumb and your forefinger and the leaf of your ear, just massage around and around and around. Squeeze it, pinch it, all around, all around. When you get to your earlobes, give yourself a tug and then give yourself a hug. And if you do that reset every day, I promise you, your days will be better.
Mhm.
We recently had a mom from Ukraine. Her family, and this is not uncommon now at Bumi Sehat, her family pooled their money to get airfare for her and her husband to get out of the Ukraine. A few days after she left, their whole apartment building was bombed into the ground. She was on the 5th floor. She would have died. Um, and what a wise family to say, okay, we got to get you out. You're having our grandchild. And so her labor was long and full of trauma release and toward the end she'd been fully dilated for 7 hours, but the baby was just hung high and not coming down to the earth. You know, at fully dilated, she wasn't ready to push because that baby was still so high. And we did rebozo and we did all the things to try to changing positions and spinning babies to help the baby spin down because babies don't come straight out, they spiral out. And she said, I think it's just not, it's a no go. I have to go to the hospital. I'm too afraid to give birth. My child doesn't have a home. My child is going to be born homeless. So I guess I need
Mhm.
to go to the hospital and have this baby cut out of me. And if a mom and a baby need a cesarean birth, it's a birth. It's still a miracle. And I totally support that. I'm the first person to go there and hold their hand through the surgery, you know, and say, what a good job that you did. Thank you. People forget to thank our cesarean moms. Thank you for holding that space for your baby and for you, especially for your baby. And she was saying that. So we were getting ready to transport to the hospital. And I said, let me try one more thing. And I did the vagal release for
Mhm.
Victoria. And when I hugged her, she sobbed and sobbed and sobbed and sobbed and sobbed. And then, not that much later, not even a whole minute later, She reared back and she looked in my eyes and she said, I can do this now. I can push my baby out. And 20 minutes later, she's holding this 4 kilo baby boy.
Wow.
Totally triumphant, like, woo, she did it, you know? And
Mhm.
her feeling was, I didn't let the war take this child. No,
Yes.
I won my battle. Because at that fulcrum of birth, women are writing their life story. And that is the most intense chapter, your own birth and then the birth of your children. And when a woman is writing that chapter of her life, she needs total support. She needs us to trust her and believe in her and love her. And sometimes we need to say, yeah, you do need to go to the hospital. You do need some help. And sometimes we need to call bullshit and say, oh, really? At 4 centimeters, you want to go to the hospital? Why? Your baby's in really good condition. You're in perfect condition. Everybody's vitals are fine. Oh, it hurts too much? You want to go to the hospital and have an operation because it hurts too much? You know how that's going to feel afterwards?
Mhm.
Okay, can you just like try with me a little harder, a little stronger, a little more tenderly? Because in childbirth, you have to be the strongest that you've ever been in your life, and you have to relax and be tender. It's an impossible task, but women do it every day. And over 800 women die every day doing it, right? So, I mean, I recently had a mom who's half First Nations American and half British. And she was just like, it hurts too much. I want to go to the hospital. I'm like, okay, you know what? We're going to take you, but first let's try this and let's try this together. And I also sent her husband out of the room because he just felt sorry for her. And I said,
Mhm.
excuse me, I know you love your wife and I love you for that, but you need to leave the room until you can come back in here without pitying her because she doesn't need your pity. And compassion is different than pity. Nobody needs to be drugged down by someone else's pity of them. Okay, so don't feel sorry for people when they're going through hell because they're going to come out the other side. And childbirth, people say it's so hard and it's like, you know, this big traumatic event. Childbirth, when it's well supported in an environment where the woman is making her own decisions and the woman feels powerful, she can rip her clothes off. She can wear 10 layers of clothes when she's chilly. She can walk on the Mother Earth. She can pee and poo when she wants to. She can eat and drink. She gets to call all the shots because she's the boss. In that context, childbirth, in that context, no matter how intense and difficult it is, no matter how challenging, it is actually a healing process.
Mhm.
So I need to get off my, I'm up on this soapbox, but it is a healing process.
It is for sure. And it's
And you
like,
know, when Deborah Bonaro, go ahead.
no, say that
So Deborah
again.
Pascali
Put
Bonaro
out.
and I are dear, dear friends. Okay. Deborah Pascali Bonaro and I are dear, dear friends. She's the orgasmic birth doula who did the beautiful film and the book, and she trains doulas all over the world. She comes to Bali. She'll be here actually in March and April. If you want to meet her, you got to meet her. Anyway, she always talks about orgasmic birth. And, you know, long before we had scientific evidence, she was talking about just the sounds women make and how they behave and how they need privacy and how they need autonomy and how they just need to be believed in and supported in this most nurturing environment because you're not going to make love and have orgasmic sex in some public place. I don't think, at least I'm not. So the hospitals can be painfully public, right? Painfully public. So she always talked about orgasmic birth, and I just did a book called the Yoni Owner's Manual, which is my next book. We'll talk about that a little. And
Mhm.
you know, the clitoris, I think the clitoris is, you know, people used to think of it as this little button. It's not a little button, it's this whole amazing thing that's inside all around and in our the tissues of our vulva. And when we're having good sex, it gets engorged, right? And it gets very sensitive and we have orgasms and blissful, amazing, good sex. But when we're in childbirth, it gets even more engorged. So the baby's head is coming down into the pelvic floor. And there's this amazing clitoris who's now all engorged up and making a pillow for that baby's head. Isn't that amazing? So, as a function of keeping the baby safe and trauma free, because you don't want the head just pounding on a cement pelvic floor, you have this amazing clitoral engorged pillow happening to protect the baby and protect your tissues And it's orgasmic. It really is. In the privacy that you can sometimes get when there are the people supporting you that you love and trust you. You need to trust them, but they need to trust you. And they need to trust your baby. And I mean, and I love collaborative care. We have an OBGYN whose kids were lotus births. I was a midwife for their second baby. His wife's a doula and a midwife. She's also a postpartum doula. And he really trusts babies, he trusts women, and he trusts birth. And I love that about him. And so we've had a few really good OBGYNs for collaborative care. And that's really hard to find in this world where midwives are working in total collaboration, right? Remember, hug and kiss and love your children because oxytocin is monogamous with its receptors, right? So if you don't get enough hugs and loves and kisses and snuggles and trust in your life, it's going to be harder for you to give birth, you know? Because birth takes you down to the last brick of your foundation. All your walls have to come down, all the guardrails you've put up to protect yourself in life. So if you've been abused, it's going to be harder and longer. But really, it's kind of amazing that we have this, I call it the clitoral dragon. We each have our own, as women, personal dragon inside there that not only is an organ of pleasure for us, but one of its big functions is to protect our babies and our own tissues when we're giving birth. So I have a theory that not only are we building peace one mother baby at a time, one family at a time, but women hold the world like in their hearts, in their bodies, in their hands, in their souls. And I feel like as women, we are creating peace on this earth one orgasm at a time.
Yes.
Yeah. So your pleasure, you have a responsibility to this planet, which is ailing. And we don't have a lot of time. So you have a responsibility to look after your pleasure. And when you do that, you function in the world as a peacekeeper.
I love that. I love that because I was going to ask you, as a woman who gives so much and holds so much, what do you do to like look after yourself and care for yourself and pour into yourself? So pleasure is your trick, eh?
One of them. I mean, I have a super supportive family, but I think you notice the love and
Mhm.
the pure intention, the joyfulness of the Bumi Sehat team.
Yeah, that was something that just really touched me when I saw you all together at the Ubud Riders Festival and how caring and loving and just nurturing you are to each other and how devoted you are to this mission, you know.
Mm. Yeah, you need to come see the clinic and hang out with us. It's
Hmm.
just amazing. It's really amazing. And to see the mothers, walking around barefoot in the grass in labor and laughing and, just like they've gotten to know their midwives, our team of midwives over the course of their pregnancy. But, you get that poor woman who's come from Denpasar or Karangasem and she hasn't had any prenatal care, but she gets welcomed and she gets the same love. So, or you get a woman from a completely other country, maybe she's from Australia and she's married a poor guy from Karangasem and they really don't have enough resources. They're poorly resourced, but they're in love and they're having a baby and they really just need a safe place to do that. So,
So tell us, how can we, support your work? Anybody watching this, how can they contact you or find you or, support you in this mission to, make this kind of gentle birth accessible and available to the women who need it in the world?
mm. Well, my birthday's this month. I'll be 68 in a few days, the 24th of November. I need birthday gifts, which means make donations. Just go online, bumisehat.org, and you'll find us. Just donate for my birthday, please. That's all I want. You know, it's the end of the year. We're talking and thinking about Christmas already, and that's time when we celebrate the birth of a baby. So let's celebrate the birth of all babies and all mothers. Let's uphold all mothers and really, yeah, give to Bumi Sehat, please. I need help. The team helps to fundraise, but it's, bottom line, it comes down to me making sure that the funds happen for 4 clinics in Indonesia and 2 in the Philippines. So 6 clinics in 2 countries. We do teen support. We have this really great book for teens, a comic book. talks all it, the midwives at Bumi Sehat handle sex education in our regency. It's pretty amazing. They're downloading this book like crazy. And things like keeping girls in school by providing them with menstrual underwear so that they don't have the money for those pads. And those pads are an environmental nightmare. They're not really biodegradable at all. So we provide them with, locally made by, there's women who have, there's two different companies in Bali that make this menstrual underwear that's brilliant. It's a game changer so that girls can go to school. We even give them a bucket so that we give them 4 or 5 pair of menstrual underwear and extra little menstrual pads that are washable. We give them soap and they can wash it. They have their privacy that way. So those are important things that we do. Elderly yoga and services for the elderly. And so you can now find for your Kindle, you can find my new book, A Cage in Paradise. It's not out in print for demand yet on Amazon, but it will be really soon, probably by my birthday. But so please buy my book. If you go on my website, iburobin.com, you can find my books by PDF. But definitely my biggest need in life is to keep my children open, which are my clinics. We've got to keep them all operational and they're all open 24/7. They never close. And that's bumisehat.org.
Okay. Yeah. And that's really important. I have to say, I was writing our Christmas letters to Santa yesterday with my children. They're 6 and 3. And Fia, my little girl, was like, I said, right, that's your list for what you want, but what can you give? We can't just want things. We have to be able to give too. And she said, well, what about the children in Palestine? Because I tell her a lot about what's happening in the world. I want her to be aware, of injustice when she sees it. She said, will Santa get to them? And I said, well, I don't know, to be honest. Like they're getting right now is bombs and violence and getting hurt, And I said, but we could give to them. We can give and make sure that, if there's organizations out there, I'm sure that really need our support. So let's, put on our list that we want to give to those organizations that can support the kids who won't get to receive the way we do. And she said she wanted to go to, I said, there's kids in Bali too who won't be able to get presents because they can't afford, their mammies and daddies can't afford it or can't even eat. I said, and there's also kids with no mammies and daddies, and maybe we can go and visit them. And she's like, yeah. So I'm trying to teach her, and we have made it a mission now as a family to be able to give back in lots of different ways this Christmas rather than just getting.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, we're so blessed in that those places where they have and keep orphans, the mothers that are there hiding from their past because they've gotten pregnant, they come to us for Bumi. The orphan homes bring them to Bumi Sehat because they can get all of our services, the best services in the world, for free. And yeah, we are so blessed. We're so blessed that, families, of course, in Gaza can't get out. They can't get in, they can't get out. It's terrible. At least in Ukraine, if they can pool resources, they can get out sometimes. So we have a lot of families that don't have any money. They're here, they need a lot of support, but at least we can help them, in that way we can bring them a little bit of peace. It's pretty profound.
Yeah. Thank you for the work that you do. And, I know, yeah, you are just an incredible woman, and we will definitely donate for your birthday to celebrate you and celebrate the work that
I
you
don't
do.
do this alone. I don't do this alone. We have a really beautiful team here in Bali, and the office in Bali runs the clinics in 2 countries. They keep it all going. It's a big juggling act.
Yeah.
We sing together. We've been preparing for, there's going to be a school of music came and asked us if they could use our space and if our team could sing with them. And so we've been singing together every day, practicing for the 23rd. We'll be having a little food fair and music festival. But how wonderful is it where I've been downstairs with the midwives and there's mothers in labor and giving birth, and then upstairs there's people singing. It's just amazing.
I love that. That's the way it should be.
It can be.
Absolutely.
It can be.
Yeah, absolutely. Gorgeous. Well, thank you so much for taking the time today. And I really, really appreciate you and all of the incredible work that you do in the world, my love. And yes,
I'm
we will
super
stay in
enjoying
touch.
this. Thank you for your book.
Oh, yes, indeed.
Yeah, literally, I'm sleeping with this book. So thank you
Tell
so
me a little bit about how can I take a little picture of you with Rebel Ma? Oh, beautiful. I love that. And tell me a little bit about how it's been landing for you. What has been, something that you have appreciated, of learned or maybe learned by reading it.
Yeah, just to be able to touch in with women's stories from all over the planet. For me, it's, these kind of books give women a voice, that they otherwise would not have an opportunity to be heard. And so for me, that's the gift that I get to internalize their triumph, their courage, their pain, and it helps me in my own evolutionary path. Thank you
Beautiful.
so much.
Thank you. Thank you. And you're going to be contributing to the next one, aren't you?
I sure will, of course.
Oh
That's not a problem. That's easy for me to do. Sure.
Amazing. And
Yeah.
maybe we can, because each time we do it, we donate the funds and the royalties of the book to a certain charity, or a foundation. So maybe it can be your foundation this time
I would love
around.
it. I would love it.
Amazing.
There's so much hope in the world. I mean, I feel as women, that's what one of the things we're holding. That's why I say we're building world peace one orgasm at a time because we're keeping hope alive.
Mhm.
Mm.
Yes, and we really need to keep accessing that hope in times of despair, to turn our despair, to not fall into despair, to fall into community, to fall into each other, and to activate our creativity by accessing our pleasure and then pouring into creating something from that.
Exactly. How do we make that hope blossom in our communities?
Mm.
Lives. Okay, well, I love you. Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you, everyone.
thank you so much. Thank you for joining us today. And we will put all of the links for people to be able to find you and donate to you underneath your interview. So thanks, Lovey. Have a beautiful day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.